Jehovah in his holy word forewarned us to expect ridicule for our conviction that he's going to destroy Satan's wicked system of things. Quoting scripture, where is this promised presence of his? All things are continuing exactly as they were from creation's beginning. In other words, everything's the same, nothing's really changed. Are things really the same? Well, here in the United States, among the many shootings, I'm thinking of the one not too long ago down in Dallas, Texas, and this man was shooting at police officers, and they caught video of it, and people didn't know what the shooting was about or who was the particular target, so they started to run. They didn't know where they were running, but they were just looking for safety. So running, looking for safety, panic was in their faces. You could see it on the video. Now, during these final days of Satan's rule all over the world, people are frightened. They don't know where to go to be safe. But we have something to direct them to. Turn to Proverbs chapter 18. And this is where we have the theme for this final talk here at our annual meeting. Proverbs 18 and verse 10. The name of Jehovah is a strong tower. Into it the righteous one runs and receives protection. Yes, as wickedness advances from bad to worse, we have to run to Jehovah to be protected, to be safe. And once we're in the tower, to remain there, that means we look to Jehovah in faith and obedience, and we recognize how important it is to faithfully represent that name. So, the purpose of this talk is to encourage all of us to run to Jehovah. The ones of us that have run to him, don't lose heart. And be busy teaching others that they better run to Jehovah before it's too late. Now, the end is very close and it's obvious. Why is it obvious? Well, we're going to review some fundamental truths that are so spiritually fortifying, and you really can't review them often enough. Matthew chapter 24, and we're going to clearly emphasize why we know we're close. Matthew 24, after Jesus here has mentioned what's going to happen to the temple, and of course he gets the third verse here where the disciples in private approach him, which were Peter, James, John, and Andrew, and they want to know, when will these things be and what will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system of things? So this presence, referring to Jesus' enthronement as king and his royal visit to this earth. Now, what stands out, we have the increase of lawlessness, and you might keep in mind, that's not just criminal lawlessness, that's disdain for Jehovah's law. See, people forget that and look at the disdain for Jehovah's law. Now, after he emphasizes in verse 36 that no human's going to know the day or the hour, notice what Jesus stated. Verse 37, for just as the days of Noah were, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. For as they were in those days, before the flood, eating and drinking, men marrying and women being given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And they took no note, until the flood came and swept them all away. So the presence of the Son of Man will be. So there we have this clear comparison. It goes back to the days of Noah, and they took no note. And we see the same today. While we rejoice with the thousands that are dedicating themselves to Jehovah God and getting baptized each year, the fact is, all over the earth, by far the majority take no note. They're busy about their daily affairs, and they're not interested. They don't want to run to Jehovah. It just doesn't have any appeal to make such changes. Now, what sometimes seems to be forgotten is found here in Genesis chapter 6. Why did Jehovah take the action? Genesis chapter 6. Let's remind ourselves of what really brought this to a head, to where Jehovah took action. And it's connected with our day, because this is what's motivating him to soon take action. Here we find Genesis 6 and verse 5. Consequently, Jehovah saw that man's wickedness was great on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only bad all the time. Now notice this, it's very significant. Verse 11. But the earth had become ruined in the sight of the true God. Why? The earth was filled with violence. Sound familiar? The earth was filled with violence. It stayed that way for some time, and then finally, Jehovah is fed up with the violence. And notice verse 13. After that, God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to all flesh, because the earth is full of violence on account of them. So I'm bringing them to ruin together with the earth. Full of violence. See, same thing today. This earth is full of violence. But that's what moved Jehovah to act. And then the violence continued, and finally in chapter 7, verse 1, go into the ark. After the years of constructing it, Jehovah had had enough of the violence. Now, this is pertinent. In 1987, the May 15th Watchtower, page 20, paragraph 18, made this profound statement related to the flood and connecting it with our day. Many of those who died in the flood no doubt considered themselves nice people, not being involved in the violence that filled society in those days. But just being nice did not save them. By their apathy, they condoned the evil of their day. The crucial thing was that they did not run to Jehovah. They did not listen when God's servants spoke, so they did not take the proper steps for survival. And that's where we are now. See, people must understand. We got to preach and teach them. They need to run to Jehovah now, before it's too late. And during his presence, all through these decades, ruling in the midst of his enemies, you have to accept the fact the degree of violence at this point is mind-numbing. It's just all over the earth. Violence. And it isn't just because the media and they have the internet and such. It's just filled with violence. So that keep in mind, and we see that today. And something else Jesus connected when he was comparing his presence with the days of Noah. And note this here in Luke 17, and this is the second thing that just makes it very obvious. We are so close, and Jehovah's going to take action. And this is his judgment. Now, we would have people in general, some countries would find what we're going to discuss here, hate-mongering, but we will never water down Jehovah's word. Sticking close with it, these are the words of Jesus Christ. If they want to take issue with him, let them go ahead. Luke chapter 17, the Pharisees want to know when the kingdom's coming. Now in verse 26 of Luke 17, he makes the connection about the days of Noah, which we just addressed, and how he entered into the ark. Now, let's read 28 through 30. Likewise, just as it occurred in the days of Lot, they were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planting, they were building. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and sulfur from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be the same on that day when the Son of Man is revealed. Oh, yeah. When Jesus is revealed at the Great Tribulation, that's it. Jehovah's fed up with the sexual depravity as well. Now, two other Bible writers connect these two events. And that's why we see how close we are. If you look at the world today, it's right before our eyes. Notice Jude here. Let's turn over to Jude. And he's inspired to encourage us, especially those who have already run to Jehovah. Jude 6. And we're going to read 6 in the letter of Jude. And the angels who did not keep their original position but forsook their own proper dwelling place, he has reserved with eternal bonds in dense darkness for the judgment of the great day. So here we have it. This was a perversion, unnatural, and he's addressing this. Jehovah's inspired Jude to write this. These disobedient angels, they materialized bodies, as we all know, and cohabited with women, and they produced offspring, half human, half demon. Very difficult time for the earth, and Jehovah found that despicable. Now, this part of what happened prior to the flood of Noah's day is connected with verse 7, this sexual depravity. Let's read verse 7. In the same manner, Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them also gave themselves over to gross sexual immorality and pursued unnatural fleshly desires. They are placed before us as a warning example by undergoing the judicial punishment of everlasting fire. So Jehovah doesn't mince any words here. This sexual depravity found in the cities throughout this earth, he's had enough of it. And you'd have to admit that just like the scriptures bring out in Genesis, chapter 13 and 18, Jehovah said this cry of complaint was going up, and all of the perverted ones, and not just Sodom and Gomorrah, but the cities nearby. And this cry of complaint was just too much for Jehovah to take, and he took action. See. However, what about our day? Well, the sexual depravity, they don't think they're depraved, and our saying so is judgmental, offensive, at least to them. And we don't intend to try to deliberately offend people. This is what the scriptures teach. It's perverted, and we support Jehovah's judgment on that. However, the spirit of Satan's world is how foolish to believe that the story of the flood and the story of Sodom and Gomorrah are true. You people are foolish. Well, these stories are true. And Peter really makes it very clear here as he's inspired to write this 2 Peter in the 2nd chapter. And so we love Jehovah for inspiring him to make this so clear, because it helps us to understand how close we are. And see 2 Peter 2, 4 through 6. Certainly, God did not refrain from punishing the angels who sinned, but threw them into Tartarus, putting them in chains of dense darkness to be reserved for judgment. And he did not refrain from punishing an ancient world, but kept Noah, a preacher of righteousness, safe with 7 others when he brought a flood upon a world of ungodly people. Now notice this profound point, verse 6, and by reducing the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, he condemned them, setting a pattern for ungodly people of things to come. That's the pattern. All these ungodly people, what Jehovah did in the flood as well as in the day of Sodom and Gomorrah and judged them there, there's the pattern. That's their future if they choose not to run to Jehovah. So considering this scriptural evidence, the earth is filled with violence and sexual depravity, It's just so clear we're so close to the Great Tribulation. In contemplating what may occur, and it connects with Brother Jackson's comments about the Great Tribulation, we just need to trust in Jehovah with all our heart and not lean on our own understanding, see? And how reassuring to know that very soon no one will worry about their safety or the safety of their loved ones. The violence of the last days will be done away with. All the sexually immoral people who brazenly flaunt our precious Jehovah's laws will be destroyed, just as they were in Sodom and Gomorrah. So rest assured, Jehovah hears our cry of complaint. Do not lose heart. All you righteous worshipers of the true God, remember, the name of Jehovah is a strong tower. Into it the righteous runs and receives protection.